What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and today we're going to talk all about upside. We're going to go round by round with our top upside pick in each round, 18 rounds deep, so it should be a good episode. And today joining me, I have one of the top fantasy rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner, as well as special guest Chris Jamino of Roto Grinders, who is a longtime friend of the show. We've had him on before. Excited to talk with him about some best ball. We couldn't even get, like 2 or 3 minutes, pre-show without debating which Bills wide receiver to take in best ball this year. So should be a good show. Chris, welcome to the Flex, to another episode. And Sean, how's it going? I don't even want to hold us up, so let's get right into it with round one. Chris, why don't you start us off? Who's your highest upside round one pick in your opinion?
Yeah, just real quick, what do I define as upside? I'm talking about guys who have the physical and professional skills profiles to really reach the either spike week potential or total season upside. I'm talking about guys with concentrated usage probability. I'm talking about guys who can contribute to a total lineup upside in some cases, by creating volatile and anti-fragile constructions. And of course, classic call buying, guys that you think are going to be priced higher later than they are now, either this year or in future years. Malik Neighbors is my round one selection, largely because of the concentrated usage probability, but also he's got the skills physically and is certainly going to provide you some floor in this offense in which the depth chart has not changed virtually at all from a target share perspective. He was incredibly highly targeted a season ago. Now we've probably improved the quarterback play on the team. And we're talking about a guy who scored 7 touchdowns on over 100 targets last year. I think there's some upside room on that. His ADOT was minuscule compared to what is possible for the player, just 29th among qualified players. He's 22 years old. I mean, certainly Russell Wilson, I trust a little bit more than I trusted Daniel Jones. God forbid Jameis Winston never gets in the game. And of course, everyone likes Jackson Dart. So there's a lot to talk about here with Neighbors, but mainly I just love the concentrated workload, possibility of being the wide receiver one, and that's really all you can ask from a round one wide receiver.
Chris, I actually have a really interesting question now that you mention kind of the quarterback situation. What are your thoughts on stacking Neighbors, not with Wilson, not with Dart, but with Jameis? Because Jameis Winston is like a cheat code for wide receivers. Like, did you see Jerry Jeudy last year on that terrible Browns team with his, after getting slandered by Steve Smith the year before, and like he was doing nothing all year, and then just completely monster stretch to close the year with Jameis. I mean, I feel like if Jameis somehow ends up starting the most games, he could end up getting cut for all we know, but if he ends up starting the most games, I mean, he's just in a different tier as far as the upside he could bring to wide receivers. Any thoughts on that?
I'm personally not a gambler when it comes to the quarterback situation, right? What I'll do is I'll draft my teams over the course of the summer, and hopefully you get some clarity closer to the end on some of these other teams, and that's where I'll try to dive in. But I'm not, I'll try to get ahead of the field in some ways. I'm just not going to do it at the quarterback position. And, if anyone knows me, or, around Roto Grinders parts, I just have torn apart Russell Wilson in recent years. I hate him for the most part from a fantasy perspective, but just in terms of the wide receiver himself, I don't hate having him with Russell Wilson as the quarterback if it is him. And just generally speaking, no, I'm not gonna dance around with Jameis or Jackson Dart or any of those guys.
I think I would say this: if I have Malik Neighbors on my team, I'm probably not drafting Jameis. Maybe one team, but I'm hoping Jameis gets some starts, because if you just look at the numbers with him and some receivers compared to other quarterbacks, it's just ridiculous. So I also think Jackson Dart ends up starting more games of Russ, but that's a conversation for another day. Sean, what about you, round one?
Yeah, I mean, so this is round one, so most guys are already priced, at or near their ceiling already. But I think I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson here. He's typically being picked, fourth overall, has a very real shot to finish as the RB1 overall. I mean, this is year 3 for him. He's he's 23 years old. He's literally in his prime right now, one of the top running backs in the league. And I think, going from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix Jr. should help. I mean, Cousins was like the least mobile quarterback in NFL history last year. He even struggled to like hand the ball off on outside runs. He couldn't beat Bijan to the corner. So I think that could have been holding Bijan back. Michael Penix Jr., he's not a super mobile quarterback, but he can hand the ball off. And Bijan, for what it's worth, in those 3 final games of the season where Penix started, Bijan averaged 25.5 points per game, which would have been 4 points higher than Saquon's average on the season. So that small stretch, it obviously didn't hurt that Penix is under center. But with Bijan, it's interesting because, again, he's one of the top running backs in the league, but he also plays with one of the best backups in Tyler Algier, who actually does take away some snaps from Bijan week in and week out. He typically gets 8 touches a game. And ever since Bijan came in the league, so the last 2 seasons, Tyler Algier hasn't missed a snap. So we haven't even seen Bijan with, Algier potentially out of the lineup. So he has an even higher ceiling if that were to happen for a couple of games. So I just think this is the year where Bijan could have, his ceiling season. And yeah, he's being drafted 4th overall, but I just think he has monster upside to be, the most valuable player in fantasy this season.
Yeah, Bijan is I mean, he's had kind of like, he's set up and he's in this offense. He's in that offense, that Zach Robinson offense. I think Algier will be less and less of a factor just because they love to just play guys a lot of snaps. I mean, you talk about Mooney as well. And look at even Ray McLeod last year. I mean, guys just kind of stay on the field. I want to talk about one guy and get both of your thoughts on him before we move on. But I also got to just say that, usually you can kind of fade the guy who, was the top guy last year and, there's probably going to be somebody else this year. But Jamar Chase could just be in such a league of his own because there's really this perfect combination that you're not seeing quite as much of anymore in the NFL, which is like a terrible defense, a weak quarterback, a play caller who doesn't care about establishing a run at all. I mean, you got Andy Reid, you got Zach Taylor, not many other coaches really are going to be willing to call that many pass plays. So, and I think the Bengals defense got worse. So usually, like if I say, if I'm drafted, 1st overall, at first I was kind of going with some Barkley and kind of mixing it up, but I'm using that spot to get as much Chase as I can because this guy, him and Justin Jefferson both played 17 games last year. Jamar Chase outscored him by 75 underdog points. I mean, it's just absolutely, and more in, if you're using like a full PPR scoring system. So I think he could be in a league of his own. The Cincinnati team is just insane with, they were getting into shootouts with the AFC North, like 80-point shootouts with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, like that just doesn't happen. So I wanted to mention him, but the guy I want to get your thoughts on, because if I'm trying to find a guy, middle to late round who could kind of be that overall number 1, I think Jahmyr Gibbs has a really interesting case because nearly 2,000 scrimmage yards last year in a part-time-ish role. I know he, Montgomery missed some time, but led the NFL in touchdowns, nearly 2K scrimmage yards. And the dude, he was around 17 touches on average per game. There were games where he was splitting it 50-50 with Montgomery. So, Chris, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Gibbs? And, is there any scenario where – and then, Sean, I'll come to you next because I know you like Montgomery, but you think there's any scenario where Gibbs is just so good that they're just like, you know what, Montgomery – you're older now, you're getting 4 carries a game, and we're just going with this Gibbs again, like we did last year down the stretch.
Look, I'm not fading any Lions right now. I'm a little bit concerned about the coordinator change, but these guys are also explosive. We'll talk about another guy later. But yeah. These guys are also explosive. Jahmyr Gibbs was one of the fastest ball carriers a number of times last year, 5 carries over 20 miles per hour, which is just insane. He's just extremely, extremely dangerous. I do think that the concern is there's only so many There's so many mouths to feed here. Like, which one of the can you get the concentrated usage? And of course, my roster construction preference favors wide receivers in round one for the majority of my drafts. But I will say Jahmyr Gibbs is absolutely a stud, and you're not going to catch me saying ill about him on this podcast.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of my point. It's, when you're kind of doing your projections and it's kind of, you have to kind of split up the market shares. You're not going to get Jahmyr Gibbs with a top tier workload, but that's kind of my point. Like on an abbreviated workload, he was absolutely ridiculous last year. Now, like, what if this guy does get a Christian McCaffrey workload? Like, Sean, like, what do you think about Gibbs? Because I know you're high on Montgomery, so yeah. I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on just like that kind of dynamic where like Gibbs, like if he ever got that workload over a full season, and could he, even if Montgomery is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point with both Gibbs and Montgomery is, they're going to be able to post, value just based on their current ADP, even if both running backs are healthy. But if either one were to miss time, they both get a boost. So, I have Jahmyr Gibbs as a top 5 running back if Montgomery were to be healthy every game this season. But if anytime Montgomery misses time, I mean, Gibbs is probably going to be like RB1 in our weekly ranks, or very close to most weeks. So he has that RB1 ceiling as long as Montgomery's out. And we saw that last year, right? Montgomery missed a couple games. There was a couple of games where he was probably playing banged up and didn't see a full workload. And that's when Gibbs was, the RB1 in fantasy. And that was my point with Bijan Robinson as well, is Algier has been healthy every single game. So we haven't even seen that slight boost for him either. But when it comes to both Gibbs and Montgomery, they're both going to be able to provide value where they're being drafted, but also have that, injury upside if either one were to miss time.
Yeah, it just kind of occurred to me that, and I know you like Montgomery, Sean, but I do think there's a scenario where, you move on from Ben Johnson moves on from you. You also lose Tanner Engstrand. So you're kind of, working with some new, offensive minds, I guess, that are going to make decisions. And it could be like one of those Dion Lewis, Derrick Henry situations where it was like, okay, these guys are going to split work. And, if one of them ever misses time, especially with Lewis, Henry will just be automatic. And then it's just Henry was just so good one year that it was all right. Lewis is just getting like 4 carries a game. And like Montgomery's going to be 28. He did see a bit of a dip in efficiency last season, and he got some new offensive decision makers. I could see a scenario where Montgomery maybe starts slow the first 3-4 weeks, averaging like a little under 4 yards a pop, and Gibbs is continuing to do what he does, and they just decide, hey, you know what, Gibbs 20 touches a game, Montgomery 5, and Gibbs just goes straight biblical, and it's just that's all she wrote. And so I definitely like that. Since we're talking upside, that's I do see that scenario in the range of outcomes for Gibbs. Let's go to round 2. Jamino, who you got?
Drake London is entering his age 24 season, physically gifted with tree trunk arms, and not necessarily been gifted with catchable targets. 72.5% rate last year. Get the ball in his catch radius and let's see what happens. Of course, we've got Penix coming into the mix for a full-time role that could help him do exactly that. He's escaped the fantasy prison of Arthur Smith and underwhelming QB play from his early seasons. The depth chart basically hasn't changed, just like with Neighbors. The probability of any of these other guys really eating into his concentrated target share is low. He's been quietly fantasy friendly, lined up in the slot, which they do more than you probably think. He's ranked highest in targets per route and yards per route run among those with 150 routes in the slot. This is a combination call option, skills profile, all of it. I mean, just get me Drake London this year. I do think that we haven't seen his best career season just yet.
Oh, yeah, Drake London's a beast. And there not too many guys built like him anymore. A lot of times you're seeing these more, smaller guys start to pop off, quicker twitch guys, but like Drake London is a monster. Kerner, who you got?
Gotta go with my guy, Brian Thomas Jr. here, going very early in round 2. But, I was very high on him as a rookie. Talked about him nearly every episode this time last year. So I already had very high priors on him. My comp for him was Randy Moss. So when he has a really good rookie season, I'm still going to be higher than consensus, or at least try to. But, he had one of the best rookie seasons ever. His 16.7 PPR points per game was the 9th highest by a rookie since 1998. And, if you look at the list of receivers that are on that, I mean, it's just first ballot Hall of Famers and fantasy gods. So it's very good company to be in. So he's entering year 2, could only get better. And I think, this offense could be better overall with Liam Cohen coming over. So the sky's the limit with him. And like at the end of the season, if he finishes top 3 wide receiver, I won't be shocked. And, being able to get him in round 2 will look like a steal. So he still has massive, massive upside. And the fact that you can get him in round 2 means he's my favorite upside pick from this round for sure.
It only took 2 rounds for us to get to land on the same guy. Easily Thomas for me. I mean, I already got the Jags, the win total over their division. Nice. Like, I'm all in on Liam Cohen. One of the only dudes that had a better season than Brian Thomas Jr. last year was Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay. I mean, he takes him from 20.5 points to 29.5, a 9-point increase. Baker Mayfield, 41 tutties, 4,500 pass yards, and a career high in rush yards. I mean, this offense could take a major leap forward. You do have a number 1 overall quarterback talent who has also kind of underperformed to this point. But I'll just put it like this. Since the 1970 merger, 4 wide receivers averaged 75 receiving yards per game and caught 10 tutties as a rookie. Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, Randy Moss, and Brian Thomas Jr.
Boom.
Look, I just want to chime in real quick. I've been taking him in round 1, so I didn't really even consider him for round 2. So I
can't knock that.
Yeah,
there you go. There you go.
By the way, what are we classifying Odell Beckham Jr.? Like, everybody's like a first ballot Hall of Famer. What do we call him?
He's the guy who has the brother on TV.
Yeah, Love Island. Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Catch any of the new season?
Yeah. I've been trying to catch up. Not as entertaining as Cordell's season, but nothing can.
Yeah. I mean, I love reality TV because I just watch like little stupid shit. Like, I think it's so funny how they have all these pillows on Love Island, all these bright colored pillows spread out all over these couches. But because they need to get them all in the same shot, they're always like sitting bunched up together. It would be like 3 of them chilling with the whole entire like villa or whatever it is, and they'll just be like bunched up in a little group. But I digress. Let's get into round number 3. I think we're going to have some more overlap here. But Jamino, once again, you are the dissenting opinion. So who do you got for your top upside pick of round number 3?
Yeah, definitely not dissenting. I'm down with your guys' pick, but I do think that when you look at Tyreek Hill and what happened with him last year, I mean, obviously the age is a red blinking warning sign with anyone who's 31 years old. At some point, everyone meets father time and loses the batch. But I don't think we're quite there yet with Tyreek Hill. If you just look at his next-gen speeds from last year, he had a couple of weeks where he was still clocking in with top 10 fastest ball carrier speeds. And, of course, he's still got the skills to create separation in this league. And I do think that the opportunity will remain for him. And the price has now declined from what was like a top 3 or 4 pick in recent seasons. Now we're down into the 3rd round for the guy. It's just a price-based play for me. I'm not like absolutely in love with the idea of drafting 31-year-old wide receivers in best ball. But at the end of the day, when their name is Tyreek Hill and losing a step means you're still one of the fastest players in the league, I'm still going to be interested, quite frankly, because he's going to have the opportunity to finish in that first round caliber fantasy point production if it all goes right. And that's really how I see things in best ball. I'm looking to draft as if things are going to go right for me, and I will definitely have Tyreek Hill teams.
Oh, yeah. Tyreek Hill has the opportunity to finish in a lot of different places. If you know, you know. All right. Kerner. Funny enough, I was actually going to, if I had to go with somebody outside of BTJ in the last round, I would probably said Devon Achane because it seems like, I mean, he's another one of these guys with just massive speed. And Danny was just talking about how, okay, you got no Mostert and no Wilson on the roster this year. And so like Achane's really going to kind of take ownership and, step up his role. And I'm like, I don't know how much more of a role he could take on, but I'm here for it. So that would be another guy that I would put in this category. Sean, you and I are on the same page again, and then next round it looks like you and Jamino are on the same page. But talk to me about your round 3 pick.
Yeah, so we are going with Jackson Smith-Njigba. When he was drafted a few years ago, I said, he'd probably follow a similar career arc as CeeDee Lamb, who, of course, the Cowboys took him when they already had 2 established wide receivers at the time, in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. But I think it was year 3. Both wide receivers were gone, and he was, the alpha in the offense, and that's when he, became a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy, and that's kind of what's going on with JSN here. This is his first season where he's going to be without both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Obviously, they brought in Cooper Kupp, so he has some competition for targets. But last year, it was the first 2-game stretch without either Lockett or Metcalf, and JSN averaged 21.7 points per game in those 2 games. So we already have a small sample of him, without Metcalf in the lineup. But either way, I think he's still 23 years old. He's entering his prime. He was the top wide receiver drafted a few years ago. So I've been very high on him. I've said, my comp for him was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he has a similar ceiling. And I think we saw it, times of it last year, but I think this is the year he's really going to break out. Also, he's been seeing a lot of underneath targets his first 2 seasons. I think with Cooper Kupp, in the mix, he's going to take away some of those. But I think we're going to see JSN see more downfield targets and more explosive plays. So I think the volume's going to go up. The explosive plays are going to go up. But, I think JSN's going to have a breakout season year 3. And, absolutely could be like a top 5 type receiver. I guess the only real setback is, his quarterback, Sam Darnold, who I don't really think is, a downgrade. It's probably more of a lateral move from Geno Smith. So it doesn't have, the greatest quarterback in the league, but I think this is a setup for him to just have a massive, massive year 3 breakout.
I would say it is a downgrade. I mean, Sam Darnold maybe he's put up better numbers at times, but he can't read a defense like Geno. That's why he got destroyed, essentially by like a game plan that like the entire world predicted in back-to-back weeks. So, but I think I would say, like downside wise, there is some downside, but upside, I mean, you mentioned it, 23-year-old, probably going to be a target hog. I think having Kupp there, like just enough at receiver so that you're not just going to be like super run heavy. And then I think the Seahawks could be really bad this year too. Like I think every team in their division is better than them, including Arizona. You do have a new OC, Kubiak, who did oversee Justin Jefferson's 167 target, 108 catch, 1,600 plus yard, age 22 season a few years ago in Minnesota. So I know Kubiak's kind of been a little more run heavy or tight end heavy at different points, but when he has a receiver, a talented wide receiver, he's going to get him the ball. At least that's what's happened in the past. But I look at the stretch, weeks 8 through 16 last year, 69 or more receiving yards in every game over that stretch, with an average of 7 catches for 96.3 per game with 5 touchdowns in 8 games. So that's kind of his ceiling. Like he can be close to a 100-yard per game guy. And the fact that I think the team is destined for last place in the division, I do think there's some target hogging upside, and I don't think Kupp is probably just stop, drop, and roll like Tyler Lockett. He's going in that direction. Maybe he proves me wrong, but I mean the fact that McVay and Stafford couldn't really make it work there last year down the stretch is kind of telling. So, feeling pretty good about the upside for JSN. Round 4, Jamino, who you got?
Speaking of like fast guys, like I did last round, there was 8 different occasions where if you go to next gen's like non-premium leaderboard, where you'll see Jameson Williams' name from last year, just absolutely explosive all over the field. Creating separation schematically and with his physical skills, giving him any kind of running room after the catch is a disaster for a defense. This electrifying kind of play isn't necessarily like, okay, we'll fade his ceiling, right? We've seen like the upside of Jameson Williams. Absolutely not. Neither one of you guys can sit here and tell me with a straight face that you think there's no way in any universe that this couldn't be the wide receiver 1 on his own team right now when you see what he's doing. They won't. They'll continue to use Amon-Ra St. Brown in the capacity that they've been using him. But as far as fantasy production is concerned, God forbid anything happens to Amon-Ra, I mean, this guy could absolutely destroy the entire best ball slate if he gets more opportunity than he's been getting in the past. That being said, you don't need that. In round 4, you could get the production he's already capable of and feel fine about that. And of course, with the spike week potential and the benefits of that, especially in the playoff weeks, you've got to love Jameson Williams in best ball formats. There's just no reason not to draft this guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams could absolutely – you could see him being a number 1 receiver because he's going to get those explosive catches. And this year, I don't know how much you've kind of dove into like just the overall kind of outlook for the Lions, but brutal schedule. Jared Goff is not going to be able to get his hand held by Ben Johnson anymore. Like, this team could take a step back and actually have passing scripts more often. Because remember, this team would just blow teams out last year by like 30, and that's why they were able to give Montgomery so many carries. I mean, they were giving Sione Vaki and what's my guy's name, Reynolds carries, because they were just man. So I think the passing game volume wise could take a step forward, and you might need more of those downfield completions just to stay afloat this year if you're the Lions. The last projected last place team is the Bears, and the Bears could conceivably win that division. So I think you're going to see more passing. It might not be as efficient from Goff, but definitely benefits a guy like Jameson Williams. Kerner, you're on JMO as well.
Yeah, I think JMO's the guy in this round. Still just 24 years old, should be entering his prime. I mean, you have to remember his first 2 seasons, he missed a ton of time due to injury, gambling suspensions, things like that. So last year was his first real season, and he broke out. He was more consistent than normal, and, he obviously had those spiked weeks. He actually finished in the top 12 29% of the time, which is the 15th highest rate at wide receiver. Great for best ball. You're going to get those spiked weeks. But kind of what Jimeno was talking about where, the last 2 seasons, there's only been 1 game when either Amon-Ra or Laporta missed time, and he went 4 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. So a lot of other receivers get handful of games every season where they're kind of moving up the target pecking tree. He's only had 1 game with that. So again, he has that untapped upside. We're not saying that Amon-Ra or Laporta is going to miss extended time, but if they were, his ceiling is even higher. And I agree. I think the Lions could be in more trailing game scripts. They're going to have to throw more this year. So a lot of things could set up JMO to have just a monster season.
There's a lot of teams you could put him on right now where he would be demanding the number 1 status, right? Like, it's just he's in a situation where he's got like a lot of other talented players around him. That's really what I mean to say when I say he could be the best receiver on the team, is that he's talented enough that that coordinators should want to scheme him the ball, and they will.
Absolutely. And this guy, and the really good thing too is at one point in his career, he was more of like a 80-ish percent snap guy, and he really started to up that down the stretch, and to be 90, 95%. So he should be on the field every snap this year. Yeah. I almost went JMO, but I actually got a little bit more of a contrarian play, and it's gonna sound not as sexy, but I'm gonna make the case for DK Metcalf. And there's a couple of things that kind of put me on to him when I'm kind of looking at him versus a guy like JMO. And the one thing is JMO still does have a potential league leader in targets ahead on his own team ahead of him. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think DK Metcalf could lead the league in targets. And you might say Pittsburgh, run heavy, defensive minded, NFC North Pittsburgh. But number one, I've been kind of paying attention to some of the things Mike Tomlin has been saying. And, he was talking about last year how we're not going to continue to try the same things, or we would be crazy. And remember, at one point, the Steelers were a pass-heavy veteran quarterback target. You just force feed the ball to your number one receiver in Antonio Brown every game, no matter what, and live with the results kind of team. And then they kind of gone away from that and, just trying to get by with this defense, and it's not really worked. So I don't think you sign Aaron Rodgers to hand off. I don't think he signs if he's going to hand off. And it kind of reminds me of last year where you had Rodgers go, with his Jets supposedly elite defense that wasn't. But, everyone's like, all right, they're going to be like this run heavy team, no real upside there. Aaron Rodgers was second in the league in attempts, fifth in attempts per game. I think you could see something similar to that this year, kind of like that ghost of Ben Roethlisberger year where he was like terrible in throwing only short stuff, but they were like 11-0 to start the year and throwing like 40 times a game because he needed to throw that many times to get his 280 yards or whatever it was. I think you could see something similar to that here. So I see a path to Metcalf leading the league in targets. I think he's just going to be absolutely force-fed the ball. Pittsburgh has a win total of 8.5 juiced to the under, which means they're, at least the market is expected them for the first time to not have a winning season. So they're going to be in some trailing game script. The schedule's not easy either. So I think I'm not a fan of Rodgers at all, but I do kind of see a scenario where Metcalf is just a target monster. Rodgers targeted Garrett Wilson 26.5% of his routes before Devontae got there in the first 6 weeks of the season, including a 21 target game. And then once Devontae arrived, Devontae was targeted on 27.5% of his routes. That is a elite target per route production. And I think Metcalf can essentially be like a higher volume version of what they kind of wanted Pickens to be. And, he could even see Antonio Brown type volume on this team because Rodgers is going to control the offense. Like, I don't think Arthur Smith is going to look Rodgers in the eye and say, nah, let's hand off to Kenneth Gainwell again or whoever it is. So I think there's some kind of sneaky, unsexy Steeler upside with Metcalf. And remember, the Steelers get into shootouts with the Bengals now. So there's always that. All right, round number 5, Jamino. Who do you like here?
All right, I'll try to keep it tight because we got to get through some rounds here. Let's talk about the Broncos backfield. RJ Harvey was drafted, and they openly discussed the need to draft a joker. So immediately when I think about Sean Payton in years past and what that means for the running back in this offense, it certainly doesn't mean the Mark Ingram role, right? I think we're more looking at the Alvin Kamara role, presuming that he gets through the summer, earns the right to take that role. I think there's a little bit of speculation that that's just definitely going to happen. That needs to play out here, but I'm betting on it. I've watched enough of this guy's college footage to see that he has the word Joker written all over the back of his jersey that you can read clearly as he's running down the field on massive, massive explosive touchdown plays all throughout his career. Sean Payton says he's got an affinity for this kind of archetype, and he certainly looked for every opportunity to mention that this is what he was going to take in the draft. And when he came up on the board, I got excited about it. I was like stoked. I was like, I could see very clearly that was what was going to happen here. Hopefully that comes to fruition because I have been drafting him so far in round number 5. I think the upside is, of course, I've currently got it projected for like low 30s rushing share. If he actually gets more rushing share than that as well and gets looks at the goal line, that would also very much improve upon the projection I already have for him, which is good enough for me to take him in round 5.
Yeah, and I see what you did there with the Denver Joker. Little double entendres there. Kerner, who do you got in round 5?
I'm going to go with George Kittle here. Brock Bowers led the tight ends last year in total fantasy points, but George Kittle actually led the position in points per game. So he's already, coming off a ceiling season. even for Kittle. But it's really hard to see too much of a drop off in, what's going to be his age 31 season, especially with, Deebo Samuel now in Washington. Brandon Ayuk probably won't be ready by week 1. Probably eased
Don't draft
in.
him. Don't draft
What?
people.
Oh,
don't
yeah.
draft him. That's I already know when we're gonna be in like August, and I'm gonna be writing up like, guys, I'm not drafting Brandon Ayuk, who's gonna miss the first X amount of games and be completely mispriced.
First, he's gonna miss the first X amount of games, and then when he does return, play limited snaps. So
right, and be the 4th best receiver on the team behind Kittle and Jennings, and
exactly.
McCaffrey.
You're proving my point, Raybon. So, so Kittle's just, he's always a high ceiling guy, week in, week out. There was just so many mouths to feed that he would have a low floor, but that's kind of out the window where he's gonna probably have a high floor and a high ceiling. So if he could just stay healthy for one season, he could blow away the tight end position. But the other thing is he was always, high catch, high yardage guy through his career. But Brock Purdy has really unlocked his touchdown upside. He's one of Purdy's favorite touchdown targets. So if you look at the past 3 seasons, his touchdowns are up. So again, with Deebo gone and Ayuk probably missing some time, that's just going to be even more touchdowns as well. So Kittle in round 5 just offers massive upside if he could stay healthy, of course.
Yeah, this is it seems like a 49ers Super Bowl type season. Every they either go like last place or they're going to the Super Bowl. So we had that last year where they just did the whole injury last place crash out. This seems like one of those years. So like Kittle, still, and with Kelsey maybe slowing down. I mean, Kittle still looks pretty spry. For me, I'll go with another maybe somewhat surprising one. Calvin Ridley, who I've usually down on these last couple of years, but sometimes I think you gotta kind of look at the big picture, and there's these kind of like under the radar guys that you're not no one's really completely fading, but also not as excited about. And I think Ridley kind of fits in that category, kind of like a Terry McLaurin heading into last year. So you're gonna have a quarterback that should be a lot better. I had about 50 uncatchable targets for Ridley a season ago, still finished with 1,000 yards on 64 catches. Nick Westbrook-Akine stole most of his touchdowns. He only had 4, but we know he's capable. Had 8 the season before and 1,000 yards in a pretty shaky Jags offense as well. But I just think this is another guy who could be an absolute target monster on a bad team that is willing to throw. Because Callahan, where does he come from? Cincinnati. So I think just because we saw this, let's hand it to Pollard, Spears, let's kind of play it conservative. I think that was more a matter of personnel and Will Levis just kneeling down and throwing the ball to the other team all crazy. So this year, I think the defense probably overachieved a little bit last year. I mean, they were the worst team in the league. Somehow their defense was 17th in DVOA. I could see it going downhill. This is still a last place projected team, one of the worst in the league. So I think they're going to have a lot of trailing game scripts. I don't think Callahan minds airing it out 40 times a game if Will Levis and Rudolph are not his quarterbacks. So I think you might see some surprising pass volume for Cam Ward. And I think you could see a Terry McLaurin like 2024 season where the efficiency just takes a major step forward. Ridley's always going to be on the field running routes, 90+% of the time. He can even take a handoff here and there. So I think Ridley is kind of like a post-hype kind of guy to buy here. And I mean, if you look at the competition for targets, you're talking about stop, drop, and roll Tyler Lockett in the twilight zone, Van Jefferson and his half a catch per game. And then like everyone's trying to make fetch happen with all these like, day 3 undrafted guys like Restrepo and Chimere Dike and who's the other one? I know I'm missing one. Ayumanor or whatever. Like these guys, I mean, these guys aren't going to do jack. Like it's going to be Calvin Ridley, and more Calvin Ridley, in my opinion.
Maybe a little Chig mixed in. Maybe a little Chig.
Yeah, maybe a little Chig, but they also got the rookie tight end too. Who's it? Is it Gunnar Helm? I think it is. So they I mean, I just see like if there's one guy that's going to have a ton of targets on this team and could push for the league lead, I think it's Ridley. I don't think Lockett's going to be a factor. Is kind of what I'm saying. Or those rookies. I know people are high on some of those guys. I am not. If you just look at the track records of guys like that, especially on bad teams. Very, very rare to make an impact. Willie Snead, a few others, but really for me, round 6, Jamino, who you got?
Okay, so talked about Kittle, and I think Jennings is an equally good play for upside. Obviously, people are overvaluing Ayuk for some reason. I also believe he's not going to play at the start of the season the way things stand right now until we get some more information. I'm going to proceed with that in mind. He's not necessarily just an opportunity-based play. He was actually good in his opportunity last year. He was quietly, the third. I'm sorry, what do we got here? In the slot, he was the third best among qualifiers in fantasy points per route run and yards per route run. I do think that Ayuk's absence will put Demarcus Robinson on the outside to start this season at times. So if that is true, certainly he'll be lined up in the slot and being efficient there, but I don't think he needs that. I think he can play anywhere. And I do think he's blessed with capable quarterback play. And also for fantasy best ball, he's got Tennessee, Indianapolis, and Chicago in the best ball playoffs to look forward to. So I do think that there's a lot of things in his favor, not just the fact that he'll get opportunity and overall just any of the San Francisco 49ers in the absence of Ayuk is going to be a good play here in 2025.
Yeah, I like Jennings. He was my second choice. I'll talk about my guy in a second, but Kerner, who you got?
I'm obviously going with Dave Montgomery here. He's been my favorite mid-round running back ever since he joined the Lions, just because of his high floor ceiling combo. He's technically the RB2 on his team, but he still carries a high weekly floor. Last year, he averaged the 15th most best ball points added per game. And that was with Gibbs being healthy the entire season. So he never once had a game where he could tap into his top 5 upside whenever Gibbs misses time. So I agree with you guys. I think, the change in offensive coordinator could result in Gibbs getting more touches. He's clearly the best back on this team, but still, this is a team that, they score a ton of touchdowns and they like to feed the running backs around the goal line. So Montgomery still has that touchdown upside, which is great for best ball, great for his upside. So even if Gibbs weren't, to miss any time this year, I think he would pay off in round 6. But again, if Gibbs misses any time, he's going to be a top 5 back in my weekly ranks. And just, I can't pass up that built-in upside in round 6 here.
Got to get your life jacket, Sean. You're starting to swim in that frozen pond with Montgomery here.
You think Montgomery's a frozen pond guy?
I think he's. I mean, maybe it's because I just kind of got done with my whole futures and I'm kind of sold on the Lions or regressing and having more trailing game scripts that I kind of talked myself out of him a little bit. But yeah, I do think he's a frozen pond. I mean, age 28, kind of more of a 2-down guy. Yeah, I think it's fair to put him in there. In that category. I mean, there's a lot of them this year.
I'll have to consider it. I do think there's more downside there this year, but that's it's round 6. And again, if Gibbs misses time, where are you ranking him in your weekly ranks? Top 5, top 10?
Yeah, no, he's probably there, but I mean, I'm just saying, compared to he's still going as a top 25 back, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's not like the value isn't as crazy as it's been in years past, but like I said, I'm kind of sold on the Lions taking a step back. Some people may disagree, so that's kind of playing into the projection as well. But for me, I'm going with another, again, kind of post hype, maybe somewhat unsexy pick here, Chris Olave. Now, I'm generally another guy I've generally been down on, but usually we're talking more season-long median projections, guys you're trying to get consistency out of. I think the big risk with Olave is concussions. But that's the downside. Upside-wise, you're talking about a 25-year-old receiver, first 2 years in the league, over 1,000 yards, first-round pick, last year on his way again, and then just got knocked out. And now you're getting Kellen Moore, who's always in the top of the league. Offenses are always in the top of the league in plays. Kind of a lot of unknowns going on. But you talk about a target hog. Saints projected to be, if it's not the Titans, the Browns, some people even have the Giants, but it's usually the Saints that are projected as the worst team. And I think they very well may be the worst team in the league, just given their quarterback situation. But that's not enough to take me off a guy who could still lead the league in targets. And the concussion risk probably goes down a little bit without Derek Hospital Ball Carr. Shouts to Michael Thomas throwing him passes. About half of his career passes have come from Carr, and I'm pretty sure most of the ones that have put him in harm's way have come from Carr. So Kellen Moore, that's the kind of the wild card here, because this terrible team, you expect bad quarterback play, but Kellen Moore, pretty good offensive mind. Generally has like a fast-paced offense. I don't think he's going to be able to take the air out of the ball like he did with Philly last year. Every other offense, he's been high up near the top of the league in pass attempts, 66th percentile for his career as a coordinator in terms of pass attempts, even with that number 32 finish for Philly a season ago. So like Olave here, just another guy I think has a shot at leading the league in targets or coming close to it. All right, round 7, Jamino, who do you like here?
People are going to pigeonhole Caleb Johnson as a early down grinder just because he played at Iowa, but he did have 22 receptions despite them having a 65% rushing rate and a snailish 58.8 plays per game, third slowest in the country. I think he's an all-purpose back. I think he can do more. I think he can just basically be the majority of that Najee Harris role right from the get-go, and that should include a lot of the goal line work. And I think you don't have to make it more complicated than that. The Steelers are usually a competitive team. They could be better with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback than they've been in years past, and I do think running back's a position that a player could step right in year one and get a significant role with no problems, no questions asked. They call him a good culture fit. Everyone loves him over there in Pittsburgh. Why not, in the 7th round, take a shot on youth with Caleb Johnson?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely ticketed for that Najee. I mean, the Steelers they're still pretty predictable. Like, they kind of telegraph some things. Like, all right, let go of Najee, draft this like his replacement, got in the with a decent draft pedigree. Yeah, like he's gonna get, it's gonna be 1 for 1. Maybe Kenneth Gainwell kind of gets similar snap counts to what Patterson had, but yeah, you're gonna get, and Warren's gonna be in the same role. Like that, Steelers are not hard to read in that facet at all. All right, Sean, you and I are on the same guy here, and this is one of my favorites. Talk to me about Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I almost went with Caleb Johnson here, but I went with the other rookie in this round, Matthew Golden. He's the 42nd wide receiver off the board, which is usually the range where I like to take swings on rookie wide receivers, the ones that I think have upside. That's where Brian Thomas Jr. and Lai McConkey were in this range last year. I don't think Golden has that type of upside, but I do think this is a sneaky landing spot for him, because on paper, this is a crowded wide receiver room and tight ends, obviously. But first off, Christian Watson may miss, half or more of the season. He tore his ACL very late in the playoffs, so he's not going to be ready. Jaden Reed only plays 11 personnel, so there's going to be some snaps where Golden's out there without Jaden Reed. And then, Dobbs is Romeo Dobbs. So I think Golden has a legit shot to lead this team in targets. But he also just has really good downfield ability. He kind of gives me Terry McLaurin vibes just with his speed and ability to win downfield. He caught 59% of balls 20-plus yards downfield in college last year, which led this class. So I think he has a shot to make a ton of explosive downfield catches in what's a pretty run-heavy offense. So he could still give us spiked weeks even if the volume isn't there. So I think he's a great swing and best ball. And again, he has a decent shot to lead this team in target. So as the 42nd wide receiver off the board, I think there's a great range to kind of take a flyer on a guy like this, who I think, he still has a high floor, but I think for best ball specifically, he should be able to provide plenty of spiked weeks.
I think he does have Ladd McConkey upside. Absolutely. No question about it. And the reason is, I totally agree with you on all your points. I'll just put some numbers to this first of all. Over the past 5 seasons, the NFL has gotten more pass-heavy. Receivers are getting more reps, high school, college, pros, spread offenses, all that. Past 5 seasons, rookie wide receivers drafted in round number 1 have posted a top 12 fantasy finish 20% of the time. 1 out of every 5. That's not bad odds, especially when you're talking about, most of these guys their ADPs are going to be in this range. and a median finish of wide receiver 33. So high floor, high ceiling for these guys drafted in round 1. Now, again, sometimes with these, it's just as simple as reading the tea leaves. The Packers are screaming at us that they hate their wide receivers. Yes. All right, Exhibit A. Jordan Love, last season, almost kind of got hit in a way, right? Like, this was a run-heavy team. Jordan Love wasn't throwing the ball. What was going on? Jordan Love was number 5 in QBR, number 4 in net yards per attempt, number 3 in sack rate. The dude had a monster season. They just didn't throw the ball, not because of Jordan Love, but because they hate their wide receiver room. The wide receiver 1 is Jaden Reed, supposedly. An agent had to say it. They want him to get less snaps. They keep decreasing his snaps. He's the supposed number 1. This is the guy we're worried about as the wide receiver 1 ahead of Golden. 4.4 targets per game last year. 4.4. Wide receiver 1. All right. The wide receiver 1 in terms of actual playing time, Romeo Doubs. 43 career games. Never had 100 yards receiving in a game. This guy's leading the team in routes and playing time. Not only did he never have 100 yards receiving in a game, this dude has 235 targets in his career. Regular season. Never even had one catch go for 40 or more. Like, this room is trash. Dontavian Wicks, good routes on film. That's where they go to die. Never puts up numbers in a game. And when you have that epiphany that, like, we love Dontavian Wicks in the fantasy community, at least I know I did. I know, Sean, you liked him at times. They envision him as what Bo Melton and Malik Heath actually were. It's just there were injuries. Like, when everyone's healthy, Dontavian Wicks plays like 20-25% of the snaps, and they've never really shown the willingness to increase it. Christian Watson, they were trying to use him as a full-time receiver. Like, they were playing him, 85, 90, 95% of the snaps, and then he broke again. So, and Bo Melton, by the way, Stuckey just sent me a text. Bo Melton is now a cornerback. So that's how much the Packers hated their wide receiver room last year. I'm not even kidding. So now tell me again, what is the issue with Matthew Golden? Who are the guys he's competing with? Is it the 4.5 target per game guy? That's the wide receiver 1. Is it the guy that never puts up any numbers? The guy that never even gets to play when everyone's healthy? Or the guy that's playing corner now? Or like, was it someone else? Like, I don't know who it is, because I think Matthew Golden, wide receiver 1 from week 1, probably gets to play 99, like actually gets to play, 90-95% of snaps. Seems like they've been looking for a guy like that, so they don't have to keep, rotating guys in and out, because that just hadn't been working for them. And you got one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league, and best play callers, offensive schemes, best offensive lines, like just and in a challenging division where you're not going to be able to, I don't think, continue to just run the ball like you did last year. Jacobs probably regress a little bit, get hurt, whatever, something like that. So love the upside for Matthew Golden. And he's great for fantasy because he's going to get downfield targets. And, like those targets that Jordan Love can damn sure throw. That's the kind of targets he's going to get first and foremost. So, yeah, I think he can finish top 12 year 1. He's already the best receiver on the Packers. I just think this guy is getting way too discounted compared to like a Ted McMillan or even a Hunter. Like, I just don't think – I think their upside is all similar if you just look at the track record of if a team drafts a guy, they're telling you a lot, that pedigree, that first-round pedigree. All right, let's go. Keep it moving here. Round number 8. We'll go 18 here. Jamino, who do you like in round 8? Upside.
Yeah, so round 8 was tough for me. I didn't know if I loved anybody. TJ Hawkinson was the closest thing here because we've got a situation where the player was injured last year and struggled a bit coming back from that injury, but historically had shown some more juice athletically and some greater efficiency. Certainly was targeted quite a bit last year in terms of percentage. And I think that you called him, basically their slot receiver, and that seems accurate. Generated just 1 touchdown on 50 receptions. And this is a Vikings team that, outside of Addison and Jefferson doesn't really have a lot to work with in the receiving game. So I do think that Hawkinson at the tight end position has the upside to get to places where like Kittle and Laporta could get production wise. And I just don't see a whole lot of reason to shy away just yet. I do think that, he may never come back fully from the injury. That certainly is. It used to be a lot more possible than it is these days from the ACLs. But I'm not worried about that right now just yet. I am just going to bank on the targets being consolidated here with Hawkinson and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I know you Sean, you probably see the single tear for Jalen Naylor just streaming down my cheek. With Chris, you were when you were like, yeah, nobody but Addison. No, the touchdown guy. Yeah, no, but I agree. I think we've seen him from Hawkinson. We've seen him be a 9-10 target guy. And by the way, same thing I said about Detroit when we talked about JMO and why I kind of lean Gibbs over Monty and all that. Minnesota, 14 wins last year. I think they take a big step back this year. They overperformed by nearly 3 wins compared to their point differential. Teams like that usually take a massive step back. So I think a lot more trailing game scripts and, Hawkinson on the field instead of Josh Oliver, Mr. Extension, as Nino and I were just discussing off air. But, I think this round was kind of an interesting one as well. Kerner, who you got?
I'm going to go Darnell Mooney, who's being drafted as the wide receiver 47. But he was pretty consistent last year on his new team in Atlanta. He actually finished in the top 30 44% of the time last year, which ranked 35th. So that's a lot of useful games, very high floor. Unfortunately, he just didn't have as many spiked weeks for someone that's kind of seen as, downfield threat. But that could change this year. He led the team with 18 downfield targets, so I expect that to continue this year. So I think he's a strong fit with Michael Penix Jr., who was considered, the top deep thrower of last year's QB class. So I think, they could form a good connection there. So we could see more spiked weeks to go along with the high floor. And I don't know what's going on with Kyle Pitts. Maybe he gets traded away. I'm not sure, his 4.5 targets a game will move the needle too much. But if Kyle Pitts is moved, that could be an extra target or 2 for Mooney going forward. So, Mooney's a guy, this is kind of a weird round where you have some, rookies, more sexy picks like Jaden Higgins, Ibuka, and Tampa Bay. But I think Mooney he's quietly consistent and maybe has a few more spiked weeks this year. So I like his upside here in round 8.
I just don't want them to trade Pitts because then it's gonna make me rank Ray McLeod a lot higher than I want to. Because I was all ready for them to go more 2 tight end sets this year, Warner, Pitts, and I was like, all right, Ray McLeod can't keep this up. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, are we gonna get another Taylor Gabriel ass season from McLeod? But I digress. Yeah, so this I agree. This is kind of a round where I could have gone a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
I just kind of stepped back and said, all right, who just has the most ridiculous talent that just pops that maybe hasn't always had the numbers to match? And the one answer, Kyler Murray. I think we kind of forgot about him, but it's really hard to compete with, if a team kind of drafts right around a Hurts or an Allen or a Lamar Jackson, they have a big edge with that rushing ability, especially with the tush push not banned now for Hurts. So you're gonna need almost certainly some kind of similar upside to compete here. So Kyler Murray kind of fits in that category. He has been trending down a bit in his rushing yardage, but remember, he's coming off the knee injury. He's over a year removed, about 1.5 years removed from coming back from that injury. And you did start to see him, run a little more down the stretch, and he was still very explosive. Still was getting in the end zone, got in the end zone a handful of times. So I think he has unrealized efficiency upside in the pass game. His career high was 7.9 yards an attempt, 271 passing yards per game last year, 7.1 in just 227. And I think he still has a rushing upside. The guy, it's still really hard to catch him when he's going in space. And you have that Marvin Harrison talent improvement upside, because I thought he had a bad year, all things considered. And you have an elite talent at wide receiver, an elite talent at tight end in terms of pass catchers. The defense, you did draft 5 straight but could still be shaky. So why? And you have just a very good favorable schedule as well. No real weather games except at Cincinnati week 17 potentially, and that's going to be a shootout. Like, come on, who are we kidding here? So besides that, I mean, you're at New Orleans, San Francisco, Indy, Dallas, like Seattle, but early in the year, Tampa, Houston, the Rams. Like you're going to be playing in good conditions. I think he's getting confidence back, and another year in the scheme. Two elite pass catching talents. Love Kyler this year. I think he's one of those quarterbacks that could match the upside of those guys going in the top four. All right, we're after this, we'll be halfway through round 9. Chris Jamino.
All right, so I'm gonna read you a stat line of a player that's not the player we're talking about here. 16 games, 271 completions, 58% completions, 3,089 yards, 6.7 per attempt, 4.3 touchdown rate, 85 QB rating, 38 sacks taken. Not tremendous numbers. Young player. That was year 2, Josh Allen. Now you compare that to Caleb Williams last year, 351 completions, 62%, 3,500 yards, 6.3 per attempt, 3.6 touchdown rate, 87 QB rating, whopping an unimaginable 68 sacks taken. Now that's bad. But the point of saying that was that Josh Allen didn't come into this league as a high draft pick and absolutely laid it up in his first 2 years. Players are allowed to get better. And I do think with Ben Johnson stepping in as the coordinator and an absolute embarrassment of riches at wide receiver and tight end to throw to, I do think Caleb Williams has every excuse to get better this year. It will be troubling if he doesn't, as a matter of fact. And I'm just looking for that to happen at this price tag. We're talking about, taking a player 9th, 10th round who could very conceivably have 4,000 yards passing and, significantly improved touchdown rate and significantly fewer sacks taken. And I just see a chance here to really easily make stacks in best ball with, drafting DJ Moore in round 3 or 4, or getting into the Odunze business, or getting one of the tight ends. There's just a lot of opportunity to make it easy for a correlated team with Caleb Williams. Punt on the quarterback, get that volatile roster construction that I love so much. Caleb Williams, I'm willing to take the chance that he doesn't suck, despite the fact that what we saw last year was complete shit.
Oh, yeah. You're talking to a guy who just literally in the past 24 hours, max bet everywhere, Bears 5-1 to win the division. Like, I'm all in on this Lions regression, Vikings regression, and Packers Bears come up. So don't mind it at all. He was starting to get pricey there for us. I mean, he was creeping up into like the top 8 quarterbacks, but I agree. I think you do have to have some Bear stacks. That's how I want him. I don't really want much naked Caleb, but I want him. I am very high on the Bears offense, and Ben Johnson. So agree there. Kerner, round 9. Who do you like?
I'm going to go with Trey Harris here. Chargers took him in the 2nd round. And to be clear, I'm saying he has the most upside. I'm not saying he's necessarily offering value here, because he does have to beat out, Mike Williams and Quentin Johnson in camp to possibly become.
Done. It's done. He's the wide receiver 2. Continue.
Oh, it's already happened?
Like, how hard is it? Well, have you seen these guys play? Come on, we actually have seen these guys play in person. Come on.
I would say the odds
unless he's
definitely
just as bad.
The odds are definitely in his favor. Don't get me wrong. But he profiles as sort of a deep threat wide receiver. My comp for him was actually Alec Pierce. So I think in best ball he's going to be kind of similar to Alec Pierce, where a lot of weeks he might have a dud or two, and then he's going to pop off for an 80-yard touchdown one week. So I think he's going to be very streaky, have a very high floor, low floor, high ceiling kind of profile as a rookie. But the fact that Justin Herbert's his quarterback, I think helps him out as a rookie, because again, like, he has a really good downfield passing quarterback. So I think he's in a solid spot. But it's right. He might lose some snaps to Mike Williams or Quentin Johnson. Who knows? So I don't know if he's going to be a full-time player. But either way, I think he has a ton of upside. This is a pretty good landing spot for him, all things considered. So. Again, I'm not saying he's a smash spot in round 9, but I think in this range, I think it makes sense to roll the dice on a guy with this profile.
So I'm going to be completely honest with you here. This is real talk, real live. The minute you said Trey Harris was going to lose snaps to Mike Williams and Quentin Johnson, there was an earthquake. Like, I don't know if you saw the screen shaking, but there is an earthquake. So just going to put that out there.
It was probably the earthquake was probably Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman steaming at the idea of you not mentioning who can block the best as who's going to be the outside wide receiver that wins the job. This is going to be like the Michigan Wolverines out there, the way they want to run that offense. They're going to run the ball this year. They're going to put the goddamn hat on, and I'm scared to death of wide receiver options here, but I don't disagree that the player looks talented. It's just that, like, I would love to see what their plans are for actually running this off. They're talking about running design plays with Justin Herbert. I saw that yesterday. Like, just like, nothing against these guys' talents, but all three of those guys are scaring me to death.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not a believer in Johnston. I know him or Ricky Pearsall are just going to trick people with their like one monster game at the end of last season into drafting them way too high. I've seen enough. I don't need any of that. And then Mike Williams, I mean, these bigger bodied guys, it's just really the fall off comes a lot quicker with some of these guys. I don't think Mike Williams has it anymore. But for me, I'm going to go with a quarterback in this round as well. Again, I think, you got to start thinking about, okay, overall in the, like, what are the blind spots? Where's the upside I need to account for? And when you start getting down here, you got to think about, okay, like if I didn't draft a quarterback early, and I think a lot of people who do this as much as we do tend to kind of shy away from that, strategy unless you're making specific stacks. So I got another quarterback, and it's Justin Fields, and tank commander Justin Fields of the New York Jets. So in 2024, he only made 6 starts. He had a QB1 overall finish, a QB7, and a QB12. So, three solid, one very good, and 3, 50% solid. The year before, 2023, he had 5 QB3 or better finishes, a QB6 and a QB12. So ton of upside. And then in 2022, the last 10 starts of the year for him in 2022, he finished top 10 in 9 of those, top 5 in half of them, including 2 QB1 overall finishes. This guy, it's just the rushing. This guy averages 175 passing yards in 44 career starts, just 175 and 1 pass touchdown per game, but 9 carries for 55 yards rushing, and just over 0.4 rushing TDs per game. And remember, you do have this guy, Tanner Enstrand, coming over from Detroit, unproven guy, but was working under Ben Johnson. And I'm sure, passing game coordinator I'm sure he played a part in that, in the success of Detroit over these past few years. So the fact that, he's kind of leading the charge here, and they're going to roll with Fields. And I think he's going to get starts because I think if anything, they'll just tank with him and figure out quarterback next year. But I think he'll stay in the lineup, unlike, the Steelers last year, who were trying to preserve that Mike Tomlin record and whatever they were trying to do. So I think Justin Fields, one of those few quarterbacks that can kind of give you that upside that you get, that the people who are drafting the Hurtses and Lamars and the Joshes are going to get, early on. And I think you do have to consider that when you're talking about trying to, have a team that's going to be in that top 0.1 percentile. Like you can't be like your quarterback, has to be straight. And, a lot of people are going to be stacking. And so that's another reason why I like targeting some of these scrambling quarterbacks, because I think a lot of people, once you get past the top 4 scrambling quarterbacks, are thinking more about stacks. Whereas a lot of these guys, you could either take unstacked or, just stack with, one guy and kind of be done with it. So yeah, love the upside of Justin Fields here. I'm gonna have a lot of him. That'll do it for part 1. Check out fantasylabs.com for all of our best ball rankings. You can find Sean at the Odds Maker, Chris at Chris Jamino, and me at Chris Raybon. We're on those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.